My name is Natallia and I'm happy to be here today. Today I will discuss the concept of algorithmic power and how it can be understood through feministic theory and contemporary artist practices. I would like to consider how algorithmic systems increasingly shape the conditions under which we become visible, recognizable, and socially eligible in digital environments. The central argument of this presentation is that algorithmic systems are not neutral technical tools. They operate as structures of power that shapes visibility, identity, and subjectivity in digital environments. Contemporary feminist approaches to AI governance emphasize that algorithms are not neutral mathematical objects, but socially situated systems shaped by historical, political, and cultural relations. In this sense, algorithmic systems should be understood not merely as technical instruments, but as contemporary technologies of subjectivation and reproduce and normalize gendered forms of visibility and embodiment. At the same time, feminist theory and artistic practices allow us to critically examine and challenge these processes. And I begin with the idea of algorithmic power as a continuation of disciplinary and normalizing power described in classical critical theory. Following Foucault, power should not be understood as something that exists only at the level of institution or state authority. Instead, it is disparate, productive, and embodied in everyday practices. In digital environments, this form of power is intensified through computational infrastructures. Algorithms classify, rank, recommend, and exclude. And these operations are not simply technical. They structure what is visible and what remains invisible. For example, some studies of digital platforms such as TikTok, for example, recommendation systems show that visibility is strongly shaped by engagement-based signals such as watch time and interaction speed. Produces feedback loops in which certain types of content are continuously amplified while others are systematically marginalized. In this sense, algorithmic systems do not only reflect our behavior, they actively shape it through structured visibility regimes. This leads us to a key theoretical point. Normalization in digital environments is no longer external or institutional in the classical sense. It becomes personalized and continuous. Users encounter curated environments that define what is desirable, relevant, or even imaginable. This is where Foucault's concept of disciplinary power becomes especially relevant, but also needs to be extended to account for computational system. With Foucault helps while Foucault helps us understand how algorithmic systems normalize behavior, Judith Butler allows us to examine how this system participate in the production of subjectivity itself. Judith Butler's theory of performativity helps us understand this transformation of subjectivity. Butler argues that identity is not something fixed or pre-given. Instead, it's produced through the repetition of social norms. The digital environments, these norms are embedded within interfaces, algorithms, and platform metrics. Users continuously perform identity through interactions that are evaluated, classified, and ranked by algorithmic system. In this sense, algorithmic visibility becomes closely connected to vulnerability. Since recognition within digital system is always dependent on normative structures that can also exclude, erase, or discipline subjects. A relevant empirical example comes from studies of social media classification system, which show that algorithmic ranking models often reproduce gendered and social patterns of visibility. One platform, such as Instagram, for example, content that aligns with dominant aesthetic norms tends to reveal higher engagement and greater visibility. This includes specific visual standards related to facial symmetry, lighting, and bodily representation. And as a result, users gradually adapt their self-representation to these algorithmic expectations. Subjectivity, therefore, becomes something continuously shaped through feedback from computational system. From this perspective, algorithmic power does not simply regulate behavior. It actively participates in the production of subjectivity itself. Teresa de Lauretis provides another important theoretical framework through her concept of technologies of gender. She argues that gender is constructed through cultural practices and representations that gradually become internalized as identity. Algorithms intensify this process by automating representation on a large scale. They embedded gender categories with data models, classification system, and recommendation infrastructures. Empirical research on platform moderation and recommendation systems shows that gender content is often amplified or restricted in systematic ways. For instance, studies of recommendation infrastructure demonstrate that theoretical gender representation tend to circulate more widely, though engagement-based ranking mechanism. This means that algorithms do not simply reflect gender norms. They actively stabilize, reproduce, and normalize them within digital environments. However, questions of algorithmic power are not limited to representation alone. They also concern embodiment and the changing boundaries between the human and the technology. Donna Haraway's concept of the cyber further expands this analysis. Haraway challenges the distinction between the human and the machine, suggesting that contemporary subjectivity increasingly emerge through hybrid and technological mediated relations. In digital environments, embodiment is shaped through algorithmic systems such as facial recognition, biometric tracking, and image classification technologies. In this context, the body increasingly appears as a data file and computational legible entity. A concentrated empirical example can be found in studies of facial recognition systems, which demonstrate significant disparities in accuracy across different gendered and racialized groups. These systems often perform more accurately on white male faces than on women or people of color. This demonstrates that visibility itself is not neutral, but structured through algorithmic design, training data, and computational standards of recognition. In other words, some bodies become more legible to computational systems than others. And this raises a crucial question: who becomes visible in digital environments, and under what conditions? Rosie Braidotti and Carol Barrett extend this discussion beyond representation. Braidotti's posthumanism feminism challenges the idea of the human subject as central in technological systems. Barrett's agential realism goes further by arguing that matter and meaning are irreplaceable. From this perspective, algorithms are not external tools applied to reality. They are part of material discursive processes that actively produce reality. This means that algorithmic systems do not simply represent the world. They participate in its construction. Recent research on algorithmic subjectivities, such as the work of Palmer, further supports this perspective. They argue that subjectivity is co-produced through interactions between human and algorithmic infrastructures. Classification systems, interface design, and effective responses all contribute to shaping what we understand as the self. Subjectivity, therefore, is no longer located solely within the individual, but distributed across social technical systems. And at this point, it becomes important to move from some theoretical part to a practice, particularly to contemporary artists' interventions. Contemporary feminists and cyber-feminist artists' practices play a key role in making algorithm structures visible. These practices do not simply critique technology, they actively expose its hidden operations and embedded forms of exclusion. For example, feminist interventions in AI art expose how claims of objectivity in computational systems often conceals embodied bases, exclusions, and structures of power. For example, Stephanie Dickens' project, not only one, uses AI trained of intergenerational Black oral histories in order to challenge dominant data regimes and algorithmic form of erasure. Rather than relying on large-scale commercial datasets, Dickens constructs an alternative AI system grounded in memory, storytelling, and relational knowledge. Her work questions whose voices become legible with the AI system and how technological infrastructures reproduce historical exclusions. Similarly, Satplas's facial weaponization suit resists biometrical surveillance by creating collective masks that cannot be recognized by facial recognition system. These masks are internationally undurable to machine vision technologies and expose the normative assumption embedded within computation visibility. Plas's works demonstrates that visibility itself can become a political problem, particularly for bodies that do not conform to dominant biometric standards. Artists also work with glitches, synthetic images, and alternative datasets to disrupt standardized algorithmic processes. This intervention challenges the idea that digital systems produce neutral or universal representation. A relevant example comes from analysis of social media platforms as a aesthetic production system. Studies show that algorithmic recommendation systems tend to favor standardized and cameralized optimized visual styles. This creates pressure toward visual harmonization, where certain aesthetics are amplified while others are marginalized. At the same time, artistic research involving AI-generated self-representation demonstrate how identity is shaped within algorithmic environments. For example, Anna Reidler's work on machine learning datasets explore how AI-generated images are deeply dependent on processes of categorization, labeling, and training data selection. Her artistic practice foregrounds the labor of decisions involved in constructing datasets, revealing that AI systems are shaped not only by technical processes, but also by cultural assumptions and epistemic frameworks. In this sense, her work challenges the perceived neutrality and objectivity of AI-generated representation. And this aligns closely with feministic epistemology, which emphasizes situated, partial, and rational forms of knowledge. Artistic practice, therefore, becomes not only a form of critique, but also a method of investigating how algorithmic systems construct reality. These artistic practices make algorithmic systems materially and visually prescriptible, transforming abstract infrastructures into visible political and aesthetic questions. And this artistic and theoretical investigation also connect to broader debates surrounding AI governance, such as those developed by UNESCO, for example, emphasize that algorithmic systems are deeply embedded with existing social inequalities. These discussions increasingly call for more inclusive, transparent, and participatory approaches to AI development and regulation. And feminist theory contributes to this field by drawing attention to questions of representation, care, accountability, and epistemic justice. And to conclude, algorithmic power can be understood as both a continuation and transformation of earlier forms of disciplinary power. It operates through computational infrastructures and shape visibility, identity, embodiment, and subjectivity. Through the theoretical frameworks, we can better understand how this system produce, regulate, and normalize contemporary forms of subjectivity. At the same time, some empirical studies of digital platforms and facial recognition systems demonstrate how this mechanism operate in practice. And feminist artist practices, in turn, they provide the ways of critically engaging with the exposing these structures of algorithmic power. And what is ultimately at stake here is not only technological governance, but conditions under which subjects become visible, recognizable, and socially intelligible within digital environments. Together, these perspectives allows us to understand algorithmic power not as a fixed technological condition, but as a condensed field in which power, identity, embodiment, and agency are conclusively produced, and can therefore also be reimagined and transformed. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Natallia. And yes, we don't have, unfortunately, we don't have many time for questions, and because wine is waiting. But one.
So lucky am I. Thank you very much, because we finally talking about some very serious issue. When we're talking about posthumanism, what kind of human do we mean? Like we are very different, you know. So thank you for this. We put in the discussion. I hope the small question. Maybe you can answer, maybe you not. So now we live in an algorithmic era, and do we have a specific practice, care of the self, what Foucault and Butler means? Do we have something specific now in comparison to the disciplinary era? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So, do I understand correctly? Like you're asking, like based on the theoretical author that I mentioned, like do we have something to bring up to take care of us now, right? Something.
Yes, we have a specific definition of Butler and Foucault about the care of the self. Foucault mentioned like meditation and something, and Butler talked about performance and everything. So do we have something specific for algorithmic era?
That's a great question, by the way. So I do believe that we can find something like this for sure. Like if we like go deeper in the maybe the theoretical part as well. So as long as we can always like rethink the ideas and implement it somehow on ourselves. But like for now, I think that it's important to be like very attentive to this question, to this point, as long as I goes closer, like and deeper in our life. And for now, I would say that we're still in progress of this, like, you know, on identifying what is happening now with us. So it's not like we can have the fixed answer. This chapter is not ended yet. So we're reading it now. So I think that it's better to follow it. But it's a great question. So maybe I would think about it deeper later and we'll come with it. Thank you.